problems are not always presented to us in the perspective that makes it the easiest to solve. Would we agree with that? In most cases, it's actually biased in a way that makes it hard to solve. And sometimes we have to flip our perspective on problems and challenges in order to solve those problems. And today, I hope to flip your perspective on digital transformation. So no presentation on digital transformation is any good unless you have the words Industry 4.0 in it, right? Now, I got some comments on why am I not talking about Industry 5.0 right now, or X.0. It's because most of us haven't got to 4.0 yet. So we're hoping that as part of these initiatives and what Aviva is trying to drive us to is that we can enable us to get to 4.0. In fact, Industry 4.0, there are 8 organizations that are tracking as many as 17 different technologies that make it Industry 4.0. Now, it's not important, in my opinion, what these technologies are. Only that Industry 4.0 represents a space and time in which we're able to do something more unique than we did in the previous generation of technology, right? And today, many people conflate, and you see this even in prospectuses, financial documents, CEO statements on technologies, and conflating Industry 4.0 with digital transformation. Digital transformation doesn't equal Industry 4.0, and Industry 4.0 does not equal digital transformation. But digital transformation is enabled by Industry 4.0 technologies. And I see them as tools in our tool belt in order to solve problems. How many times have you heard or seen initiatives brought out by CEOs saying, we're going to have an AI initiative. We're going to do a 3D printing initiative. We're going to focus on that. But now you haven't identified problems. You're trying to look for problems to solve with a particular solution. What if we approached Industry 4.0 and digital transformation with the mindset of solving a problem first and then figuring out what tools we need to solve that problem and solve that challenge? I like to relate this to what if you went to your doctor. Typically your doctor will ask you what your problems are, what your pain points are, and then they'll prescribe a remedy, a solution, using the tools they have in their tool belt, whether it's physical therapy or whether it's drugs. But how bad would it be if you went to a doctor and says, hey, I think I want some of that Vicodin. Can you prescribe that to me? I think I have the need for that. I have a lot of pain in my life, and so I need Vicodin. And that's not how it works. And that's not how we should approach digital transformation. We shouldn't start with the tool. We should start with the problem. Back in 2018 and 2019 timeframe, McKinsey and the World Economic Forum surveyed 10,000 manufacturers looking for companies investing in Industry 4.0 technologies. And they found 16. And so these 16 companies formed a consortium, the Global Lighthouse Network, where they can bounce ideas off of each other, learn where each other has failed, and help them to mature their organizations leveraging Industry 4.0 technologies. Fast forward to today, there are now 130 companies participating in the Global Lighthouse Network. And there are over 200 manufacturing sites as part of those 130 companies participating. Now, Global Lighthouse Network publishes the results of KPI improvements based on these companies and their initiatives within the Global Lighthouse Network. And you could see that these KPI improvement ranges are pretty diverse, but they're pretty spectacular. In fact, if you went to your CEO and just asked, or the CFO, and said, hey, I think we can get a 3% productivity increase, they're going to ask you, how much is that going to cost? Because I might be willing to write a check right now. And that's just on the low end. And I know that the 400% is probably a way outlier of a use case. But you say, well, what are people actually really seeing on average? And so you don't have to take my word for this. I pulled this right off of their webpage of all of the KPIs and their improvements. And you'll see that many of them are focused between 10 and 30% improvements. That's impressive, and that's massive. That begs you the reason, why doesn't everybody see those type of improvements? So I looked at these lighthouse companies and these success stories, and I tried to boil down what is it that they're doing, and what makes them unique. And one thing I did know, that success was not limited to just big companies. People think that, well, only the big companies can afford to invest. But the reality is there were companies with only 100 employees participating in the Global Lighthouse Network and getting results. Everybody can participate. The other fact I saw is every single one of these companies didn't do this just because they were just doing it. They wanted to do it. They were doing it because they felt it was necessary for them as an organization to stay competitive in the marketplace. The other thing is they didn't make these huge capital equipment purchases. They didn't come in and say, well, we're just going to make this widget or this machine, buy this machine that's going to make our widgets 20% better and faster. They didn't do that. They transformed existing brownfield sites. So what did they do? How did they get these gains? Well, you hear in the media a lot of times, a lot of negativity around automation, robots, AI. But McKinsey did a study that said only 5% of jobs in the whole marketplace are 100% automatable. But 60% of jobs are at least 30% automatable. And that's where these lighthouse companies saw their improvements. They were able to give 30% time back to 60% of their employees. And they didn't eliminate staff, they upskilled and reskilled their workforce. They enabled them so that they can go and solve value-added problems for their organization. That's how they are getting the KPI improvements. But yet, as we all know, 70% of digital transformations fail. But why?